of artificial intelligence, which is also called intelligent systems, and in human-centered computing. A lot of the work I do lies in Pasteur's quadrant, if you're familiar with that notion, which is kind of at the top right, is research that's inspired by real applications. One way to think about this is in the contrast between research and innovation, and you've probably seen this quote, that research turns money into ideas. You give me funding for some research, I'll produce ideas from it. Innovation turns ideas into money. And so a lot of the work we do tries to span that whole cycle, where you want to start with new ideas and then have impact back in the real world. These are some of the areas that I've worked in over the years. I'll talk about education today in particular, but I've also done a lot of work in games, healthcare, biomed, monitoring diagnostics with GE, robotics, and so forth. Okay, so let's talk about open social learning. Let's start with the problem of education. Right? Everyone knows that education is, if not the major problem facing this country and many other countries around the world. But perhaps the biggest problem, maybe along with healthcare and energy, is the top three problems we are tackling. But what is the problem with education? Okay, what's actually going on? So a lot of people are arguing about whether we need better nationalized standards, more testing, less testing. A lot of people argue against standardized testing. Clearly, we have a very good talent pool of teachers. So it's not an issue of the talent, it's more an issue of something else. So when we started to look at this problem, and both Preeta and I have been in education for many years, we noticed two big problems that I think nobody is really tackling. So the first problem is a problem of access. About a third of the world's population is under 20. It's estimated that there will be 100 million people who are qualified and able and interested in getting a college degree. And this was actually in 1996, John Daniel wrote that to meet the demand, we would have to create a major university every week. This is clearly not happening. And this is 96. The estimates now, about 10 or 15 years later, are more about 300 to 400 million students, especially when you include the global population in India, China, and other places. So that's one massive problem. Okay. The second big problem is engagement. Bill Gates Foundation sponsored a study just recently. It's called the Silent Epidemic Study. They studied dropouts in high schools and colleges, primarily high schools. And they found this really interesting fact that 88% of high school dropouts have passing grades. So what does that mean? These kids, 88% of kids who drop out are passing in school. They're not failing out of school. Why are they dropping out? It turns out they're just bored. They're not engaged. They're not interested. Classes are not interesting. And the more we throw technology at them, the less interested they get. 60% of students find video lectures boring. You give them electronic textbooks on their smartphones and their computers and iPads and whatever other fancy gizmos you give them. Most students read less with electronic textbooks than with traditional textbooks. So throwing technology at the problem is not helping. And there's lots more studies behind this. So that's the second biggest problem. Firstly, we have this mass of students who we cannot accommodate, and then the ones we can accommodate, we're just boring the hell out of them. Right? So basically, the problem is, this is not education. Putting people in front of technology, putting them in front of computer quizzes and flashcards and video lectures doesn't teach anyone anything. So that's the problem we're trying to address. If you think of this from a business perspective, you might call this the long tail of education. So you're familiar with the long tail concept, right? On the what's called the short head, you have the traditional market dominators. In industry, these are the universities. There's everyone from the Yales and MITs and Harvards to Georgia Tech, Emory, IITs, and the rest of them. That short head can accommodate a very, very tiny fraction of the demand. They can't get in, they can't afford it, there's just not enough seats anyway. So what do we do about the long tail, about the 300 million or 100 million, depending on which estimate you want to believe, people who are not able to get in there? So the answer to this has been open education. This was started by MIT about 2004, if I remember right. It's now become very popular. MIT put all of its courses online. So you can go to MIT's website. They offer 2,000 courses to their students who are paying $50,000 a year to go to MIT. You can take every single one of those courses yourself for free on your computer. The lectures are there, the homeworks are there, everything's online. It's completely free. Every other university has now followed suit, almost everybody. Georgia Tech is not there yet. But there's, there's Yale, and there's really everybody. And now around the world we have things like IGNOU in India, the Indira Gandhi National University, and others who are going after open education. The response to this has been overwhelming. The numbers are quite staggering. MIT OpenCourseWare has 9 million unique visitors a year. Just think of that number. Then their most popular course is Introduction to Computer Science, which I teach at Georgia Tech. They have 40,000 unique students a month. So that one course every single month is as large as an entire university. A lot of demand for this stuff. iTunes University from Apple just announced its 300 millionth download. You've all seen the buzz about Sal Khan and his Khan Academy. Huge traffic, 30,000 videos a day, adding more every week. So all of this has been really popular and is helping to solve the access problem. Those 300 million people can get an MIT education if they want by going and watching these lectures, or any other university you want. Still a problem, right? I just said 60% of people find video lectures boring. Watching a lecture, even from the most talented MIT professor, late at night by yourself on your laptop is not an education. That's not why you pay $50,000 to go to MIT. George Siemens talks about this. He says, great video, talented presenters. My only complaint, I like to interact with others who are viewing the resources. You may be one of 40,000 people taking the CS course at MIT, but you have no idea who those other 39,999 are, because it's just you and your YouTube video, or whatever you're watching. So how do we engage our students? So to answer that question, we started looking at what are our students engaged in right now? What are they spending their time on? Facebook. Number one, Facebook. Right? 95% of our students spend 10 to 15 hours a week on Facebook. Right? They're really engaged. 80% of them, if you look at what they do for homework, 80% of them go to Wikipedia. Right? Remember I said 60% of them are reading their textbooks less and less, but they're still going and reading Wikipedia. 55% of students use instant messenger for homework. That's a larger fraction than using IM for dating, which is the other thing that they're engaged in, right? So our students are very engaged in social media. And yet if you go to any school, if you have kids in school, I'll wager you, your school does not allow social media in schools. Facebook is banned on campus, which is ridiculous, right? Because this is what students are interested in, and we want to stop that. Instead of trying to figure out how to harness that. This is the other thing students are engaged in, games. Gaming is an $11 billion market. Gaming is a larger industry than movies. It's a huge market. And this is a quote from Barack Obama. Not too long ago. I'm calling for investments in educational technology that will help create education software as compelling as the best video games. So they're into social media and Facebook. They're into games. The idea behind open social learning is let's combine the best of these worlds into a learning experience that will really engage our students. Let's get the Facebook generation where they are. So it's a kind of Facebook meets World of Warcraft. And that's where the idea for open study came from. If we can harness that power, we can engage these students, we can captivate their interest, and we can get them re-engaged and re-interested in education. The way it works is this. You take all of these people who are on MIT or iTunes or any other places, you take traditional students as well, we're not going to ignore them.